The Mockery, the UES Defiant, drifted through the void like a wounded beast limping towards sanctuary. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge, her weathered hands gripping the railing as she watched Nexus Station grow larger through the main viewport. The massive structure dominated the star field, a testament to alien engineering prowess that made even the most ambitious human constructions look like children's toys. Crystalline towers spiraled outward from the station's core, each one pulsing with energy patterns that created hypnotic light displays across the hull. Docking bays the size of small cities housed vessels from across the galaxy, their sleek forms representing thousands of years of technological advancement. The Zenthari battle cruisers gleamed like liquid mercury, their surfaces shifting and flowing as if alive. Etherian ships appeared to be constructed from pure energy, geometric patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. Even the smallest patrol craft from minor species possessed elegant curves and exotic materials that spoke of civilizations far beyond Earth's current capabilities. Chief Engineer Tom Bradley adjusted the power coupling for the third time in an hour, muttering under his breath as sparks flew from an overloaded relay. The bridge of the Defiant was a cramped affair, with exposed conduits running along the ceiling and repair panels covering old battle damage. Everything had a jury-rigged quality that spoke of countless emergencies and creative solutions born from necessity. "Captain, we're receiving docking instructions from Station Control," Lieutenant Maya Patel reported from her communications console. Her voice carried a note of barely suppressed irritation. The controller asked if we needed emergency engineering support. He seemed concerned about our structural integrity. Bradley snorted with amusement, patting a control panel held together with reinforcement strips and determination. Structural integrity? This old girl has been through 17 major engagements and more skirmishes than I can count. Every patch and modification tells a story of survival. Through the communication array, they could hear fragments of alien conversations as ships throughout the system exchanged information. The universal translators picked up comments in dozens of languages, most carrying the same underlying theme. The humans were clearly not taken seriously by the galactic community. "Look at that primitive vessel," came a melodic voice from an Etherian ship, the words flowing like music through the speakers. "It appears to be constructed from salvaged materials in desperation. How do they expect to contribute meaningfully to galactic defense with such crude technology?" A deep, rumbling voice from a Zenthari cruiser added its own commentary. "Perhaps they plan to sacrifice themselves as a distraction. It might be the only tactical value such an obsolete design could provide." The laughter that followed was translated into harmonic frequencies that made the bridge lights flicker ominously. Rodriguez maintained her composure, but her crew could see the tension building in her shoulders. They had endured variations of these comments at every diplomatic gathering, every joint military exercise, every attempt to integrate human forces into the galactic defense network. Earth's technology lagged centuries behind the established powers, and everyone knew it. The docking procedure proceeded smoothly, despite alien expectations. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim guided their ship into the assigned berth with practiced precision, the magnetic clamps engaging with a satisfying thunk that reverberated through the hull. The airlock sealed with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and the crew prepared for what they knew would be another exercise in diplomatic humiliation. As they prepared to disembark, Bradley ran a final diagnostic on their presentation systems. The holographic projector flickered to life, displaying technical specifications and tactical data that looked embarrassingly primitive compared to the flowing three-dimensional interfaces used by other species. "Everything's ready for the briefing, Captain," he reported, though his voice lacked enthusiasm. "I doubt they'll be impressed by our capabilities." The main conference chamber of Nexus Station was a marvel of engineering designed to accommodate representatives from hundreds of different species. The architecture itself was a masterpiece of universal design, with atmospheric zones for different breathing requirements and gravity fields adjusted for various physiologies. Environmental controls maintained perfect conditions for beings who had evolved under alien suns, in different atmospheric pressures with entirely different biological needs. Captain Rodriguez and her senior staff entered wearing their dress uniforms, simple blue and gray outfits that looked plain compared to the elaborate ceremonial gear worn by the alien delegates. The Zenthari representatives wore armor that seemed to be carved from single pieces of living metal, with energy patterns flowing across the surface like liquid lightning. Etherian delegates appeared as vaguely humanoid shapes made of condensed starlight, their forms shifting between solid and translucent states as they moved. The conversation in the hall died as the humans entered. Thousands of alien eyes, optical sensors, and exotic sensory organs focused on the newcomers. The silence stretched for several uncomfortable seconds before whispers began in languages that sounded like mathematical equations, controlled explosions, and crystalline chimes. Admiral Vextar, the supreme commander of the Zenthari Stellar Navy, stepped forward with predatory grace. His reptilian features were enhanced by ceremonial scarification that glowed with internal bioluminescence, and his voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded starfleets across multiple galactic sectors. "Behold our human allies," he announced, his words carrying across the hall through built-in amplification systems that translated them into every language simultaneously. "They have traveled far through dangerous space to contribute to our defense preparations. Tell me, Captain Rodriguez, what technological marvels does your species bring to protect civilized space from the threats that gather in the darkness?" The question was clearly intended to showcase human inferiority, but Rodriguez answered with calm professionalism that belied the insult. "We bring practical solutions, Admiral. Our ships are built for extended operations without support infrastructure. Our weapons systems are designed for reliability over sophistication. Our crews are trained to adapt and overcome regardless of circumstances or available resources." A crystalline chime of laughter came from the Etherian delegation. Council Prime Zara, their military leader, materialized more solidly as she spoke, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Reliability and adaptation are admirable qualities for maintenance crews and support personnel. However, we face threats that require advanced technology beyond your current understanding. Energy weapons that can disrupt matter at the quantum level, defensive systems that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, propulsion methods that transcend traditional physics. Surely you have something more substantial to offer than good intentions and determination." Bradley stepped forward, activating their holographic display with visible reluctance. The projection showed technical specifications for human weapons, systems that looked laughably primitive compared to the exotic technologies being discussed around them. Kinetic weapons that accelerated chunks of metal to high velocities, chemical explosives that relied on simple combustion reactions, electromagnetic pulse devices that disrupted electronics through brute force rather than elegant quantum interference. "These are your primary weapons?" asked General Thok of the Gorvak hegemony, his massive form bristling with barely contained aggression. His voice sounded like grinding stone as he examined the display with obvious disdain. "Metal projectiles and chemical reactions. We abandoned such crude methods when our civilization was still confined to a single star system. How do you expect to contribute to battles fought with forces that reshape reality itself?" The laughter that followed was universal, translated into forms that every species could understand and appreciate. Some delegates made sounds that resembled musical instruments being tortured. Others flashed patterns of light that were painful to observe directly. The plant-like Florian representatives rustled their leaves in rhythmic patterns that somehow conveyed amusement and superiority. Kim clenched her fists at her sides, fighting to maintain military bearing as the mockery continued. Patel's jaw tightened as she stared straight ahead, refusing to give the aliens the satisfaction of seeing her reaction. Bradley examined his boots with intense concentration, his face flushing red with embarrassment and suppressed anger. But Rodriguez remained calm throughout the ordeal, her expression never changing as wave after wave of condescension washed over her team. "We understand that our methods may seem outdated to those who have access to more advanced technologies," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the laughter with surprising authority. However, they have served us well in the conflicts we have faced throughout our species' history. Conflicts? Admiral Vextar's voice dripped with barely concealed contempt as he leaned forward in his chair. What conflicts could your primitive species have possibly faced that would prepare you for galactic-scale warfare? Border disputes with neighboring savages, resource conflicts confined to your single world. Surely you cannot compare such limited experiences to the vast campaigns we have fought across multiple star systems. The mockery continued for several more minutes, each comment designed to highlight human inadequacy and technological backwardness. The aliens seemed to take genuine pleasure in demonstrating their superiority, their advanced civilizations, their sophisticated understanding of warfare and technology. Then the first emergency alarm began to sound. It started as a low whistle that built into a shrieking wail, cutting through all conversation like a blade through silk. Every delegate in the hall received simultaneous alerts on their personal communication devices, priority messages that overrode all other functions. The massive display screens around the chamber switched from conference information to emergency broadcasts, showing sensor data that made even the most experienced military leaders pause in confusion and growing concern. The station's artificial intelligence spoke in multiple languages simultaneously, creating a cacophony of warnings that somehow harmonized into a single message of impending doom. Long-range sensors detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the void sector. Unknown fleet composition. Estimated size exceeds all known parameters. Classification, extreme threat. All defensive forces to immediate readiness status. The laughter died instantly, replaced by the harsh reality of an enemy that had appeared, without warning from the depths of space where no civilized species dared to venture. The annihilation. The main tactical display in the conference chamber erupted with information as long-range sensors struggled to process what they were detecting. The approaching fleet was massive beyond comprehension, consisting of vessels that defied conventional understanding of space combat design. The Kraxen had emerged from the galactic void like a plague of mechanical locusts, their ships dark and angular, constructed from materials that seemed to absorb light and sensor readings alike. Admiral Vextar's ceremonial composure evaporated as he processed the incoming data. "Impossible," he whispered, his reptilian features contorting with disbelief. "No civilization possesses this many capital ships. The resource requirements alone would bankrupt entire star systems." Council Prime Zara materialized fully, her energy form solidifying with urgency as she accessed the sensor feeds through direct neural interface. "These readings suggest weapons technology we do not recognize. Their energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. How did they approach so close without detection?" General Thok's massive frame trembled with anticipation rather than fear, his warrior instincts responding to the threat with enthusiasm. "Numbers mean nothing against superior technology. Our combined fleets will demonstrate the futility of challenging civilized space." His confidence seemed forced, undermined by the sheer scale of what they faced. The assembled delegates moved with practiced efficiency toward their respective ships, diplomatic niceties forgotten in the face of immediate danger. Emergency protocols, activated throughout Nexus Station as docking clamps released and atmospheric barriers sealed. The great gathering of galactic powers transformed into a military force within minutes, centuries of experience and advanced technology coming together in impressive coordination. Captain Rodriguez and her crew returned to the Defiant with quiet determination, their earlier humiliation forgotten in the face of genuine combat. The human ship powered up with familiar sounds of strained machinery and overworked systems, but every crew member knew their vessel's capabilities and limitations intimately. "All systems showing green, Captain," Bradley reported from his engineering station, though green was a relative term for equipment held together by skill and determination. "Weapons charged, shields at maximum, engines ready for tactical maneuvering. We may not look like much, but we're ready for whatever comes." The combined galactic fleet moved out from Nexus Station in formation, hundreds of advanced vessels representing the pinnacle of their respective civilizations' military technology. Xanthari battlecruisers led the formation, their Mercury-like hulls rippling with defensive energy fields. Etherian ships flanked them like geometric ghosts, their light-based weapons already charging with visible energy buildup. Gorvak dreadnoughts brought up the rear, massive engines pushing mountains of armor and firepower toward the approaching enemy. The Defiant took position at the fleet's edge, assigned to a support role that everyone assumed would keep the primitive human vessel safely away from serious combat. Admiral Vextar's tactical planning clearly considered the human ship more liability than asset, useful perhaps for rescue operations or communications relay, if the main force encountered difficulties. Initial contact came as the two fleets closed, to weapons range. The Craxon vessels moved in perfect synchronization, their dark hulls revealing no obvious weapon ports or defensive systems. They seemed to absorb sensor pings rather than reflecting them, creating tactical ghosts that were difficult to target effectively. "All ships, engage at will," Admiral Vextar commanded, his voice carrying across multiple communication channels. "Demonstrate the power of civilized technology." The opening salvo was magnificent in its coordinated destruction. Xanthari energy. Lances carved through space in brilliant beams that could melt asteroids, while Etherian quantum disruptors created tears in reality itself that swallowed matter and energy alike. Gorvak mass drivers hurled projectiles the size of small buildings at relativistic velocities, each one carrying enough kinetic energy to shatter planets. The weapons struck their targets with precision that spoke of advanced targeting systems and centuries of tactical experience. For a moment, it seemed the battle would be over quickly, the superior technology of the galactic powers overwhelming the mysterious invaders through sheer firepower and sophistication. Then the Craxon ships emerged from the energy storms completely, undamaged. Their hulls had absorbed the attacks without any visible effect, dark materials converting the incoming energy into something else entirely. Worse, they began to return fire with weapons that operated on principles none of the galactic powers recognized or understood. Beams of pure darkness lanced out from the Craxon vessels, striking Xanthari ships and causing their Mercury hulls to become brittle and crack like old ice. Etherian vessels simply vanished when touched by the alien weapons, their energy forms dispersing into nothing, as if they had never existed. Gorvak armor, legendary for its durability, began to decay at the molecular level when exposed to the strange attacks. Impossible. Admiral Vextar's composure finally cracked as his flagship shuddered under impacts that bypassed every defensive system. Our shields should be impenetrable. These weapons violate fundamental laws of physics. The galactic fleet began to fall apart as ship after ship succumbed to weapons they could not understand or defend against. Panic spread through the communication channels as commanders realized their technological superiority meant nothing against an enemy that operated by entirely different rules. Captain Rodriguez watched the slaughter through her tactical display, her mind racing as she analyzed the pattern of attacks and destruction, while her allies died around her, consumed by their own disbelief and tactical paralysis. She began to see something others missed. "Bradley, can you give me full power to the kinetic weapons?" she asked quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos on the bridge with calm authority. "Captain, with respect, our weapons can't even scratch their hulls if advanced energy weapons are useless," Patel protested, her tactical training rebelling against what seemed like suicide. "Trust me," Rodriguez replied, her eyes never leaving the display as she watched Craxon movement patterns. "Kim, plot an intercept course for the largest enemy vessel. Maximum burn on my mark." The Defiant broke formation without permission, accelerating toward the heart of the enemy fleet, while the remnants of the Galactic Armada retreated in confusion and terror. The human ship looked pathetically small against the massive Craxon vessels, a metal gnat approaching mechanical giants. But Rodriguez had seen something the others missed. The Craxon weapons were sophisticated beyond imagination, designed to counter every advanced technology the galaxy possessed. They could absorb energy, disrupt quantum fields, decay exotic matter, and neutralize force shields that existed in multiple dimensions. They were not designed to handle simple kinetic impacts from chunks of metal traveling at high velocity. All weapons. Target the largest vessel, Rodriguez commanded as the Defiant closed to point-blank range. Full salvo on my mark. The human ship's primitive weapons opened fire at a range where missing was impossible. Solid projectiles struck the Kraxan hull with nothing more sophisticated than raw kinetic energy, the most basic form of damage possible. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the alien ship's hull began to crack. The sophisticated materials that could absorb any form of energy attack had no defense against simple physical impact. The Kraxan vessel shuddered as more rounds struck home, its exotic hull plating failing catastrophically as basic physics overcame advanced technology. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Vexistar from his damaged bridge, watching in disbelief as the primitive human weapons accomplished what their most advanced armaments could not. The Defiant continued its attack run, Bradley redirecting power from life support to weapons as every kinetic cannon on the ship fired continuously. The largest Kraxan vessel began to break apart. Its hull breached in dozens of places as simple metal projectiles tore through systems designed to withstand quantum disruption and dimensional manipulation. Other human ships began to arrive, Earth's small fleet having followed the Defiant's course. Each vessel was as primitive and patched as Rodriguez's command, equipped with nothing more sophisticated than chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They had been dismissed as irrelevant to galactic warfare, too backward to contribute meaningfully to any serious conflict. Now they became the saviors of civilized space. The battle turned as human weapons found their mark time and again. Kraxan, ships that had seemed invulnerable moments before, began to explode under sustained kinetic bombardment. Chemical explosives breached hulls that energy weapons could not touch. Electromagnetic pulses disrupted alien systems through simple brute force, rather than elegant quantum interference. The surviving galactic fleet watched in stunned silence as humanity's primitive technology systematically dismantled the most dangerous enemy they had ever faced. What advanced civilizations could not accomplish with centuries of sophisticated development, humans achieved through simple, brutal effectiveness. The last Kraxan vessel died in a spectacular explosion as Lieutenant Kim guided the Defiant through the debris field, her skilled piloting weaving between floating wreckage that had once been an unstoppable invasion fleet. "All enemy vessels destroyed," Patel reported, her voice filled with wonder at what they had accomplished. "The threat has been eliminated." The communication channels filled with amazed voices as alien commanders tried to process what they had witnessed. The primitive humans, mocked and dismissed hours earlier, had single-handedly saved the galaxy from conquest. Admiral Vexistar's voice came through clearly, his earlier condescension replaced by genuine respect and gratitude. "Captain Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. We underestimated not just your technology, but your species' approach to warfare itself." Rodriguez smiled as she looked out at the debris field that had once been an overwhelming enemy force. "Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective, Admiral. We may not have your advanced technology, but we understand that at the end of the day, warfare comes down to breaking things and achieving objectives. The galactic community would never look at humanity the same way again. The species they had dismissed as primitive had demonstrated that sophistication was not always superior to practical effectiveness. Earth's place in the galactic defense network was no longer a matter of charity or diplomatic necessity. They had earned their place through victory when it mattered most.